We have three guests that have come especially to be part of our annual meeting tomorrow, and we thought we would get a little time with them tonight in a panel discussion. The first one is our main speaker, Kevin Ezell, who's the president of the North American Mission Board, and he's come to us from Alpharetta near Atlanta today. And we have John Wong, who's a mobilizer with the International Mission Board. And we have Jonathan Howe, who's the Vice President of the Communications at the Executive Committee in Nashville. And so these three guys, we'll hear more tomorrow in kind of a report mode and an encouragement, celebration mode for what's going on. But tonight we wanted to do something a little bit different and hear from them about what they might have to say for us as pastors. So guys, go ahead and, the first question I'd like to hear your answer to is, just looking across the SBC in the last year or two, what are some things about pastors that you've seen that have been an encouragement, that might encourage our congregation? Kevin, go ahead.
All right, I'll be glad to. What's been most encouraging, obviously we come out of COVID, I'm so appreciative of the way pastors have called audibles, they've pivoted, they've done whatever it takes. One of my favorite stories is in Mark 2, where they dug a hole in the roof, lowered the paralytic down to Jesus, just did whatever it took to get people to Jesus. And we've seen our pastors do that. It's been very difficult, trying, and it's wearing on them, but they did whatever it takes. And there have been some real heroes through some very difficult times. And as COVID subsided, still they're left a sense of angst in North America, and walking their people through that, it's been amazing to see. So I'm incredibly proud and thankful for our pastors and the way that they survived it, but really thrived instead of survived.
Yeah, good. How about you guys?
With the International Mission Board, I really appreciate what you are doing. During the COVID, we expect the number of the applicants would be decreasing, but right now, during the COVID, number of applicants are growing, and also the givings, Latin offering is increasing. Actually, last fiscal year, we hit the most historical mark, during the COVID. So because of that, I just really appreciate what you are doing. And also I just encourage you, because of you, we can do what you do.
I think the one thing I've been really struck by is the amount of pastors that are starting to prioritize personal care, mental health, family. We hear the stats about pastoral burnout. We hear the stats, about pastors leaving the ministry. I think the pandemic allowed pastors to kind of sit back and say, look, I can't do this. Pastors, the pastors that I do know, I mean, they're real driven. Many of you are real driven, get things done, type A type leaders. And the pandemic, I think, kind of crumbled a little bit of that, feet of clay kind of thing. And we're seeing it with Guidestone, with Mark Dance going over there, and Hans, the guys at Guidestone really prioritizing pastoral care, not just the spiritual side, but the physical and the mental side as well. And pastors are responding to that, and I think that's a good thing, that pastors are prioritizing their self-care, because they can't lead on empty. Wayne Cordero's got a book about that, leading on empty, and you've got to be mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally stable to be able to lead a church effectively. And I think the thing I've been really, encouraged by is that pastors are prioritizing that. And I'm seeing it, I'm hearing it. And we're having pastors, they're taking care of themselves. And that's a good thing. We need that, because healthy pastors typically lead healthy churches.
So looking out to next year and some of the issues that the SBC is dealing with, as pastors, what are some things that you think we should be aware of and to prepare us for some of the big challenges that we have in the SBC in 2023?
Challenges? I didn't know what you mean.
What challenges?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Part of it, it's not as bad as people make it out to be online. I think that's a good thing to remember. I was talking earlier, we were talking, and when people get in the room, they usually make the right decision. I think we've talked about this before. When we get people in the room, they typically, the room usually makes the right decisions.
Yeah.
They make wise decisions. We don't do things rash. We don't do things, that are dumb at the end of the day, a lot of times. And I think that's something to be encouraged about, is that even with all the, whatever controversy may rise, and it seems like there's a new one every day online, that when Southern Baptists get together, they make wise decisions most of the time.
Right.
And that's encouraging to me. I mean, we don't run off the rails and do crazy things. And so as bad as things may sound online or whatever it may be, or in little echo chambers throughout the convention, it really isn't that bad.
Right. It really isn't. And what I encourage you to do is, if you get online on social media, there's a mute button on there. And you can mute people. And they don't know you're blocked. You just don't. I only follow happy people. And it's not near as bad. We have challenges, absolutely. But we're addressing some of those challenges, say like the task force. Absolutely. And so they're taking it very serious and taking next steps to make sure that they do the next right thing. And I'm very grateful for that. I talk about this all the time, but there's a book called Excellence Wins that the founder of the Ritz-Carlton wrote. In the first chapter of Excellence Wins, he says that even the Ritz-Carlton can't please everyone. He said, what we realize at the Ritz-Carlton, there's a 2% jerk factor. And we tell and teach our employees, please everyone, do whatever it takes to please them, but always know there's 2% that you just can't please. And there's 47,000 churches in the Southern Baptist Convention. 2% is 940 churches. So we have a 940 church potential jerk factor. That's if we have 2%. I got an iPad list of the jerks in the SBC. And I've got 67 on there, all right? That's nowhere even near 1%. And I'm saying, some people say, oh, it's a dumpster fire. It's not. If you get a dumpster, you could put them all in one dumpster. You really could. And so that's the dumpster fire. It's not. And
that's not a bad idea.
Huh?
No.
And that's why you had this year a record Lottie Moon offering, and then a record, more important, Annie Armstrong offering. I'm just kidding. It's more fun if Chip were to hear it. We go back. But a record Lottie, a record Annie, and man, you can tell by where people are by how they give. And you're incredibly blessed in Iowa. And look, I've worked at NAM. We work with 42 different state conventions and have good relationships with 41 of them. But I want you to know, you are incredibly blessed because you have one of the finest leaders in all of North America leading your state.
I came from Richmond, so what I hear from the Richmond area is a little different what I hear from you guys. So during the General Convention this year, around that time, I've heard many discouraging stories related with some pastors or some the unpleasing news. Because of that, many people speak negatively of the churches. That is the very popular stories around the churches. Hopefully, it is not the same with your churches, but that is obviously a challenge. But not just this year, but always ethical stories, moral stories has been all in challenges. I think it will be the same, and the next year would be maybe it will affect the young people. The young people to think about what the church would be like. So because I've heard that a few churches in that area consider leaving the SBC. So that is another challenge, I think. So, but I think as you know, that we can work together, and by working together, we can avoid unnecessary confusion, also unnecessary struggles. So in that way, I just encourage you to work together among you guys and with us, with these guys, so that the challenges will remain just challenges, not a fact as we are.
All right, so last round. If you have just a minute or two to address the pastors and wives of the Baptist Convention of Iowa, and you want to give a word of encouragement to them, what would you say?
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Okay. Stay engaged. It's easy to, if you're in Ankeny or you're in Davenport or Ames or wherever you are, Cedar Rapids, to just withdraw and focus just on your own church, which is not, it's good. You need to be focused on your own church, right? There's too many pastors in the SBC that are trying to pastor other people's church and not their own. Kevin listed 67 of them a minute ago. But stay engaged in the state convention. Stay engaged with what Tim's doing here, and stay engaged with what's going on nationally. We need to work together. I mean, he's talking about, John's talking about that, and Kevin, with these offerings. I mean, we have 47,000 churches across the country that come together to put out $473 million for missions work across the country through the IMB, Lottie Moon Christmas Offering, the Annie Armstrong Easter Offering, and through the cooperative program. That's a lot of money that we're putting toward mission and toward our calling to accomplish the Great Commission. And it only happens when we stay engaged. So that would be my encouragement, is just stay engaged. You're here on a random Friday night in, what is this, November now? I mean, that's good. And it's good for you to be here. It's good for you to be at your state convention. Stay engaged, stay engaged, stay engaged. Don't withdraw. Don't just bail on it. Let's stay together. Let's fix this thing, and let's get out there and win the world for Christ.
I just want to mention two things. One is that we just focus on what we should be doing. So for you guys working with we just remember that there are so many people who need to hear the gospel. So we need to preach the gospel. For us, the Asian IM International Mission Board, we need to remember to reach out to nations, unreached people groups, or even unengaged, unreached people groups. So we are trying to reach out those unreached people groups, but without your support, we cannot do that. So just remember, we need to focus on what we ought to do. So spread the gospel. That's one. And second thing is that the work with the people. So which is what you guys are doing. As a candidate consultant, what I experience is that the good candidates come from good churches under good mentoring system. So I'm not talking about programs, but based on the relationship. So they have a good relationship with the church mentors, the pastors or elders. They became a good candidate because they have been in good churches. So just the focus on relationship, work with people. So I think that is my encouragement for you guys.
I would go back to really the first comment Jonathan made about soul care. I would just encourage you to take care of yourself and preserve yourself. I've had to go through this past year with staff at the North American Mission Board, people who failed in their walk, failed in their marriage, and it's amazing. When you sin, it doesn't just affect you. It affects obviously your family, but there's a big splatter effect, and that entire tree that you build. That's why it's such a blessing when they recognize you for so many years of service, both of you. And man, what an incredible testimony of faithfulness, and she still stands by you and smiles. That's a good thing. I want to be that. I want to finish well, and I encourage you to protect yourself because I see it nationwide, week after week after week. People do really stupid things, and I tell our planners often. There's a football coach. Last May, when the school year ended, he wrote on the dry erase board 3 things until next year. It was 3 things to remember in the summer. He said, don't do stupid stuff. Don't hang around stupid people. and don't go to stupid places. And I thought, that's good for a football team over the summer, but it's not a bad thing for pastors to remember, Sometimes we can get so busy ministering to